Welcome back, everyone, to Ollie Foreman's The Mindset, episode 5, the first one of 2023. Today, I am joined by Mr. George Pitts, who owns a property management and property maintenance company, Prestige, which is a multiple seven-figure business. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Ollie.
No worries. So, I think we're going to just jump straight into the deep end, really. I've always been intrigued by this. How did you get into that career of sort of property management, because it's like quite a large area that covers a lot of things?
Yeah, for sure. So I was always a practical person, so that's where it started from, and I'm a plumber by trade. Did plumbing for about 8 years and then got into management. Worked for a couple of companies, one like a family run business, and then one was a corporate. Both of them were actually maintenance companies, not just, say, plumbing companies. And after about 11 and a half, 12 years of that journey, I decided that actually I wanted to go out into the big wide world and try it myself. I was always good at making rules, just not following them. So I thought maybe I should give it a go myself. So so I started Prestige in 2017. I'd just come back from Australia. I thought I'd have a little bit of a break. Nice. I just hit the ground running, I suppose. So the first 6 months were a bit iffy, but whenever someone called me, I was always available. And I remember it was around May, I got a call on a Friday night. Can I go to an emergency from some random company? Saw me on Check a Trade, and I went there. And then I done in that next 6 months, nearly 100 grand revenue. And then the next year I got another opportunity and we went from 100 to 740.
That's a big jump.
That was a big jump. That was a painful jump as well, by the way. I don't think I probably bit off a bit more than I can chew, but the thing is, it's either sink or swim mentality. You either carry on working hard or you turn around. And I kept reminding myself what was the worst case scenario all the time. I kept going, and then from there we went on. Done 2.4, 3.7 the following year, and 4.2 last year. But sorry, I kind of digress. Maintenance. When I went out and started the business, I knew I didn't want it to be just one-dimensional business that only done one thing. So I had a lot of experience in a lot of other trades. I had worked with loads of different tradesmen over the year, and not that I could necessarily all do it myself, but from a managerial point of view, I could coordinate things, and that's what I did. So I made it purposely a maintenance company at the beginning, although it was mainly me doing plumbing at the start. It very quickly developed me doing this, me doing that, and it's almost like being an agent, I suppose. And people say, "Oh, we've got this problem. Can you help us with this?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem." And in the background, I think Richard Branson would say say yes and then work out how you're going to do it later. And I would say that was maybe 20% of the case, to be honest, because I'd been in the industry at that point for about 13, 14 years. My dad was from that industry as well. My cousin, George, he's also been in the industry. So I had a good bunch of people around me, actually, which was nice. It wasn't loads of people, but really quality people that were all supportive of the journey.
That makes a massive difference.
A big
networking
difference. Yeah.
Even people who are just around you from the start can massively affect the outcome of what you're doing.
Absolutely. And you know what, those good quality people make such a big difference in somebody's life. So I was very, very fortunate. I had about 5 people all kind of cheering me on from the sideline, and so far it's gone really well. But I wouldn't make up the fantasy that it's not been extremely difficult to get there. And there's been a lot of, while there's been highs and Astronomical highs. There's also been astronomical lows as well. So, and I'm a very realist that I don't like to just make it look like, oh, everything is amazing, because it's, it's the rough with the smooth all the time.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy the process, and that's the bit I love the most, the growth. So I think I have probably grown more in the last 5 years than I probably had the 5 years before that. That's how it felt like to me. Once I actually went out and, jumped in the deep end, it was either sink or swim mentality. And I made a lot of mistakes, but I like to think that success is built on lots and lots of failures, if I'm honest with you. So, and it's going well so far. So we got 30 directly employed staff now. We've got about 70 to 100 self-employed people working for us as well.
Nice.
And we're aspiring to keep growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that about like it's not all plain sailing with this. I actually had someone message me last night, and they're like, they wanted to know a little bit more about running the business, and they wanted some advice. I was like, look, the ups and downs, like the shit is always going to happen. It's never going to go away. You're just going to get better at riding the waves.
Yeah. And you know what? I think one of the big things somebody has to ask themselves is how much they want something. I truly believe that is kind of what drives somebody to be successful in something, because when I did start the maintenance business, I have never been so dedicated to something my whole entire life, where it was like work, eat. I was eating it, I was sleeping it, I was drinking it, I was breathing it. It was literally my whole entire life. And I've always kind of worked a lot anyway, but I think the last 5 years I was really, really like in the zone with it. And I think that's what's helped speed up the process. The difference between working 100-hour week versus a 40-hour week is you'll see how, in the next 4 years, 5 years, what will kind of happen. But yeah, that, you've got to be careful. You've got to balance it off, because your mental health is really important in that. And I definitely sacrificed my mental health a couple of times in that journey. But I was very committed to what I was trying to do. So that was really important to me. And I think I was just trying to prove to myself that I deserved this. So therefore, all of this became like the micro. This was the macro, and then this was the micro. So all of this stuff didn't really matter. I mean, when I was younger, I used to create problems that weren't actually really significant. And the most liberating time for me was when I actually started my business, because it almost, although it was about myself, it wasn't, because I would accommodate everyone else. I would make sure everybody else is okay. And, when you're kind of, I was ultimately serving people. And when you serve people, there is something really kind of liberating about that. So yeah, I think I really kind of felt a really positive feeling when I started the business compared to before, where it was just like my life felt so complicated. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt lost. I was unhappy.
Yeah. What was the point that kind of like your mindset kind of shifted, and you're like, right, I don't want to be employed. I want to be the employer.
Yeah. So do you know what? It started off initially after a long-term breakup. So it was about I was in a relationship for 4 or 5 years, and we broke up in the same year. And I think I was just evaluating my life, and it sounds a bit strange to say, but I didn't realize I had options. I almost thought, this is what you've got to do, and this is what it will always be. So something awoke in me, to be honest with you, and I was just like, I am not happy. And I worked for a big corporate company, and there was loads of compliance and loads of red tape, and it was like I felt like a caged animal. So I was just like, you know what? I'm 27 years old. I can stay here and foresee what my future's going to look like, because I almost looked at my crystal ball and thought, right, this is what it's going to be. Or you go jump in the deep end and see what happens, take the leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I'm a very all or nothing person, by the way. So I think for me, what it was saying, if you're going to do this, if you're going to make this decision, then you have to be committed to it. Like, you can't just spend the last 12, 13 years doing what you've just done to then be like, oh, I'm going to work today, I'm not going to work today. So, I literally, I held myself fully accountable. There was a lot of things that I just didn't do, or, I even dated a few women during the time, and I just couldn't commit to it because I was so locked into what I was trying to do. The kind of pinnacle point for starting the business was in 2017. And then it was quite interesting because I don't know if I fully believed in what I could potentially do until 2018. And it was an absolute kind of light bulb moment, because what actually happened, it went from the fear of unknown of, oh, I'm not sure what's going to happen, to you start building momentum, and then you start feeling confident in what you're trying to do. And then in the end, you're like, you know what? This is working. What I'm doing is working. This commitment, this drive, the hours, everything is working. It's painful, but it's ultimately something is happening here. And it became a very, very empowering moment for me. And I just carried on being consistent and doing exactly what I was doing, working Saturdays, working Sundays, getting up early. And I was enjoying it, to be honest with you. And I still enjoy it. So
nice.
Yeah.
You ever find, with me, I found from the beginning, so the first 5 years are the make or break of your company.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
I was piling so much stress onto myself. Kind of, you get used to it, but then at that point, I was 19, 20, that much stress, I was just physically making myself ill.
Yeah.
From that much stress. I don't know if you had anything similar to that.
Yeah. So, I've only in the last couple of years started to remove expectation of myself. Because I think that's where we kind of get lost in that. We kind of think, oh, because I haven't done this yet, because I haven't done that yet, you're almost a failure. There's been many times that I've sacrificed my mental health for other things, by the way, and rightly or wrongly, I mean, it's given me what it's given me in return. So there's always a trade-off in all of this. There's always a consequence, but there's always a trade-off. But I think one of the things that a lot of people struggle with is that we have an expectation of ourselves, rather than putting it from perspective of, this is where I came from, and I'm grateful to have reached that opportunity and live a life full of gratitude. We actually live a life full of, well, what's next all the time? What's next? So yeah, that's generally what happened in my world anyway.
Yeah. As they with me, it was just, I was in the start, I was under the impression nothing can ever go wrong. If something goes wrong, I'm fucked up here.
Yeah.
Now you realise things will always go wrong.
Always.
It's just you get better at dealing with that situation when it comes up. And it's the same with mental health, really. I like to see mental health and physical health, they're pretty much the same, even though one's sort of internal.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You get fitter, you can do more with your physical health. You keep working on your mental health, you can withstand more pressure from everything else in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, there's that saying around that if you kind of look after your body, it also encourages, a healthy, positive mindset, which is 100% true, by the way. I mean, so, I know what it's like to be very unhealthy, and I know what it's like to also live a healthy life.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. It was just if I lost everything, I still have my health. I'm of sound mind.
Yeah.
And if it was the other way around, and I lost my health and I lost my sound mind, making money in the business would just mean nothing.
Yeah, no. There's priorities in your life, and I think, health is the most fundamental one. Health is wealth, right? That's where it starts. Then relationships, your family, your loved ones, and then whatever else success means to you after that, whether it's business, whether it's being an artist, that I think success is measured in all different ways, by the way. So, but the most important part is your mindset, is looking after that. And and people work their bodies out all the time, but they don't necessarily work their minds out much.
That's 100%.
That's
everyone's more focused on looking like they're fit, but they could just be an absolute shambles.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So it's almost like how these pillars of, like, you know, body, mindset, financial, relationships, you know, it's almost trying to maximize each one to the best of your ability before maybe even moving on to the next one. That's kind of the process that I did. So I went from body, mindset, and then a balance between business and mindset, to be honest with you. And
because you went through like quite a big weight loss journey, I believe.
Yes.
So how was that? Like, what kicks that off?
Yeah, so I was at my heaviest. I was about 19 stone. People ask me, "Oh, what's that in kg?" I haven't got a clue. I never. I always checked out in stone. But my heaviest was 19 stone, and it was quite funny because I always record it going up in my age. So I was like 18 stone, 19 stone. And yeah, when I got to 19 stone, I just had a wake up call, to be honest with you. Before that, I used to love playing my PlayStation, doing all the eating loads of junk food and not exercising, and think that I was like getting away. I was almost happy by getting away with it, but all I was doing was doing myself a big disjustice, by the way. But yeah, so I went from that 19 stone, I started going to the gym with friends, and I went from 19 down to 12 stone, lost a lot of weight. And I remember how I mentally felt at that time. And I always look back at that time and think, wow, I felt unstoppable at that point. Yeah. I felt really, really good. So there is a lot to be said about looking after your body anyway. And I think when you start doing these things, it almost starts rippling into positive mindset, positive life, and positive everything else. So, so I spent a lot of years training, dieting, and I was really enjoying it. And I think there's a lot to be said about doing it with friends as well. I think having a bit of like a team around you when you do things is one of, you know, it's really a strong feeling. I think what a lot of us don't get in life is the cheering on.
Yeah.
And it's quite funny because I heard the story about this when you're a little child and you're just starting to walk, everyone's like cheering you on, like, oh, but he's walking. And you can see they're encouraged. They start walking more and more, become strong. And I think as we get older, we get less of that. But when we do have that, and when we have people that are actually positively pushing us in the right direction, I think we're unstoppable, to be honest with you. I think we can achieve anything.
Yeah.
I found that you've got to be, first of all, your number one fan for yourself.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can help you as much as you can ultimately help yourself. But to have added people on top of that, then yeah, you should be unstoppable in this life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
If that's what you ultimately want.
It's always like the way, going back to that, when you first learn to walk and everyone's cheering you on, I always see it as, the way I kind of view it as, you're not like a threat to them.
That's interesting.
Doing that.
Yeah.
But as soon as like you evolve into having ambition and like big dreams, goals, and then it threatens other people around, like their stability of what they view of the world, or their own dreams. They're like, he's got bigger dreams than me. It's this it's like a switch flips in their mind, and like, right, we get rid of these dreams for them.
That's right. Yeah. I understand that.
It's bad. It is bad.
It's people's self-limiting beliefs, by the way. That's what most of the time is, this kind of negative response when someone says that they want to start a maintenance business or start a podcast, and then you've got people on the outside, are you sure that's what you want to do, and stuff like this. It's their own self-limiting belief, and what I found is, by having an unlimited belief system, it allows you to go to wherever you want to go to, ultimately. I think the bit that I struggle to relate to those people is that I look at success not just in money, but in all aspects of life. Success is, it could be in having a family, being a really good golfer, good boxer. It could be anything. Now, as long as they are happy doing what they are doing, then you should be supporting them with whatever they want to do in life.
Yeah.
If it's, if it's ultimately something that's going to do harm to people or harm to themselves, then, be a good person and also tell them that's a terrible idea. But if they're talking about aspiring to do something in life because we don't get a second chance at this, and that is something they're really passionate about, you should be there to 100%. You want to be that person to support them ultimately.
Yeah.
Because when they do make it, they'll remember the people that were like, shoot.
100%.
Yeah. And they'll probably look forward to telling the people, do you remember when you told me not to do this? Kind of look at me now. So no, it's hard to find good quality people that ultimately they want the best for you, but then they also are supportive enough to trust you to do what's right for yourself as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like everything is a calculation of risk. And that's what everyone's afraid of risk. We have like risk assessments in the workplace and things like that. But to be fair, like there's a risk you could not walk back through your front door at the end of the day.
There is.
And if you live in fear of that much risk, you would never leave your house. Like nothing would ever get done.
Absolutely.
So like risk is basically in your mind. The risk is very real of getting hurt. But when it's a risk which is in your mind, then it's not real.
Yeah, I think there's real things to be scared of in life, and then there's things that aren't actually real fears at all. We just create them. They become so big in our minds that it actually just holds us back from whatever we want to achieve. And I think that's majority of society, by the way. There's a lot of fear implemented that actually stops us from doing whatever we want, because the reality is you should be able to freely, as long as you're not hurting people or doing anything to harm somebody, you should be able to do whatever you feel like doing, right? And there shouldn't be any societal belief system that says you shouldn't be able to otherwise. So it is important to have the right mindset in this game, and it's also really important to surround yourself with people that ultimately are cheering you on, that want the best for you. That is really, really important. Yeah,
it's important as well to put yourself around people who are a lot further along the journey than you are.
It definitely helps.
So I always used to go off this quote, if like it's more of like a gym quote, but if you're like the strongest guy in the gym, you're in the wrong gym. And that's like, I apply that to many different aspects of my life.
Yeah.
Of like, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
There's
always someone to learn off.
Absolutely.
Everything.
That is a very true statement, by the way. I mean, having the right mentors around you, that's also really important. We obviously both shared George Cashflow.
That's it. Yeah. That's the fifth episode. The fifth episode he's been mentioned. Oh,
has he now? Yeah. So everyone gets on really well with George, and he's a very admired person, to be fair. So
I mean, it's not only that he's very good at what he does, it's the group which he's put together which also makes up a lot of it. And that's where it is. It's not just go see George. It's go see George, but then also come to the group.
And be part of this family that he's created. And I agree with that as well. By the way, he's to be honest, he was definitely one of the best things I did last year, meeting him. But mentorship in general is one of the most positive things you could do for yourself. And I would encourage anybody to get a mentor in some way, shape, or form.
It used to be. I used to think about this when I was younger, and everyone was like, "Get a mentor." I was like, "What do you mean, like a school teacher?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And then it always like clicks later on down the line, and it's always people that claim like, "I'm self-made," but are you really? Because the amount of people that you've had around you at times, and people have given you advice, no one's truly self-made because no one's really done this.
No. That's a fair point, by the way. I mean, to be honest, nobody gets to any place in life without help. That's an absolute fact, by the way. So somebody might say, yeah, I did it all myself. But I don't really connect with that. I think what I know is that I'm only as good as my people that I work with. And if it wasn't for them, just like if it wasn't for, in their eyes, if it wasn't for me. So like there's a reciprocation going on of everyone kind of having respect for each other, that we've got to where we got to because we're united in what we're trying to achieve, right? So I think what I did was come up with the idea of something, but you know, everyone in my business, they work exceptionally hard, and I've got a lot of respect for all of them for that, to be fair.
How do you find managing sort of that many employees and that many subcontractors? Do you have like managers who also like deal with that?
Yeah, so we've got a good robust structure in place, I'd like to think. Always fine tuning to be done, but so we've managers, everyone's got like a line manager, and I will talk to anyone in my business, by the way. I'm always the sort of person that if somebody, you know, isn't happy about something and wants support, I will always encourage them to go speak to their line manager first. But I have got an open door policy to some extent, as long as it's a reasonable conversation, because, you know, sometimes people want to talk to you about the wrong things, and you know, that's when I probably get a little bit funny myself. But we do have a good structure in the business, and the fact that we're easily accessible makes people feel comfortable around the fact that if they've got a genuine problem, we will help them through it. And most of the time we have, to be fair. You know, I think you've got to support your team. You've got to help them in all ways, shapes or form, because I remember listening to Gary V a long time ago, and he said, when you start employing people, they don't work for you, you work for them. And if you carry that mindset, by the way, it will serve you dividends all over. And you know, it's not literally like that. It's accommodating, it's being supportive, it's doing everything for them rather than the reverse. Most people assume by being the boss, you just order everybody around, you tell them what to do. It doesn't matter how they feel, just get on with it. I expect this done. I want perfection. It doesn't exist.
I think there's that's where the difference comes in. You have a boss and then a leader.
And that's a very fair point, by the way. I think our egos generally can get in the way of certain things, and I think what I've found in this journey is that I'm seeing numbers that I've never been exposed to in my life. Right now, that changes people, and it does. I like to think that what money does is it amplifies the individual. So money, there's a saying about how money's the root of all evil, when actually I think it's the person who's using the money is what it actually is, by the way. So no, I giving back, supporting people, working as hard as them, if not harder, you know, whatever it takes, and holding yourself really accountable and being fully responsible for why something happened is the real growth as well. To assume that it's everybody else's fault all the time, generally it's the victim mentality, and it doesn't allow you the ability to control your life. Because as soon as you blame something else for happening, it's almost like, well, I can't control this, because when actually you actually stand a better chance of being able to control the situation by holding yourself responsible. Not beating yourself up, because there's a fine line in all of this.
I mean, it's taken, the way I sort of switched my mindset when it came down to this was, I was like, whatever happens, anything wrong, that's on me. Like, you can go very deep into that and be like, I employed him years ago. Like, it's my fault. You don't go that deep. You just accept that it's your own fault. But in situations where it comes like out the blue kind of things, a situation which isn't really in your control, but no one else could really control that as well.
Yeah, there are
how
some
you-
things.
Yeah,
There are some things, and I can definitely relate to some things. That I don't doubt that. I think the problem that we've got is most of us quickly dive into that mentality before we. I think it's more like 60-70% people think it's the external, so therefore I can't do anything about it, when really it should be 70 I'm responsible and 30 these are just the external situations that you just can't do something about. I mean, I heard it the other day, where we work with a company and they said, oh, it's this individual's fault. The manager was saying it's this individual's fault. Now, all that shows to me in life is that somebody doesn't take accountability for their actions. Now, in a business, when something fails, one of my team have failed, I have failed. It's not they failed, I failed because I haven't trained them enough. I haven't done something enough that has made them more competent in what they're trying to do. But by having that mindset, it allows me to grow. It allows me to then say, well, what can I do more of? What can I implement more of? How can I make this a better situation for next time? Rather than just saying it's that person's fault, and if they do it again, I'm going to... You know, there is a lot more that can always be done. And I didn't always have that mindset, but I found I have a more positive outlook in life by looking at it that way. But people don't generally like to blame themselves for things, and I think that is a known a common thing, shall I say?
It can go the other way. That's the thing. It can go where people blame themselves for everything. It can. Like it can go. There is two sides to that spectrum.
And to be fair, I lived my life like that. To be honest with you, when I was younger, I always used to blame myself for a lot of things. And it obviously was a heavy burden, but it also became a superpower as well, because knowing that most people will blame everyone else and everything for why something is, it stops them from changing a situation where actually I just knew I was fully responsible for everything in my life, where I was today. And if I wanted to really change something, then I needed to have the mindset that I could change it. Not wait for somebody to tell me, oh, you know, it's okay to change. So, I think there's a lot to be said about being accountable for things in our
especially
lives.
I'm a big believer of the only thing that you truly can control is how you react to the situations around you, your actions. Like,
I agree.
As well as like your staff members could have done something and you take responsibility for that. Like, at the end of the day, your actions, you have full.
How you respond to things is. And that was another thing I was undeveloped on, is that when I was younger, something would go wrong, I'd get really angry, for example. Anger doesn't generally really solve anything, by the way. All it does is you get upset, they get upset, and then everyone's pissed off, and there's no positive outcome from that. You can only do so much before you say to someone, this isn't working. And you can have that exact same conversation without shouting in their face. It's pretty, you know, and I didn't realize that before. I thought you had to, I got brought up in a building maintenance company when there was a lot of shouting going on. There was a lot of swearing. There was a lot of everything. So I had to work on my mindset about readjusting it to 2022, because the stuff that people used to say to me when I started in 2006, you know, in 2022, it just would not be stand for at all. So I had to make some adjustments in my head, but it was good because tough situations to me is something I actually quite like. It creates character. It makes you more tough-skinned anyway. If we kind of hide away from these, if we're kind of like, oh, you can't say this and you can't say that, then it creates a very sensitive culture. And then ultimately you can't say anything to anyone. That's what it ends up boiling down to. So no, I think there's a way that you can say things. It's articulating yourself. We spoke about Jordan Peterson outside, right? And he articulates himself very, very so well. Sometimes you don't even understand what he's saying. But being able to articulate yourself is very important in this day and age, to express how you actually feel. I think most of the time what happens is we don't know how to express ourselves, so it just comes out in a big splurt of anger and anxiety.
Yeah, I always find that, especially if you're having a debate with someone and you're kind of winning your side of the debate with like a calm demeanor, you're explaining why this, and the other person is just resorts to shouting. Shouting will win. It doesn't win.
We've all been there, by the way. I think we've all been on both sides of that. No, I do you know what? I think it's okay to not agree on things, but I think people struggle to accept the fact that what they believe is fully right and that what that person believes, rather than saying, all right, fair enough, like, let's agree to disagree. It's kind of like, it just literally turns into a shouting match until, and I've done that so many times with my friends, but I'm also learning to have healthy debates with my friends where it doesn't have to just spiral out of control.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, because if everyone, like us, when we're speaking outside, like if everyone was like a clone of just one person, it would be so boring.
Yeah,
there would be no variety.
Yes.
Like, it's again of like going on like a side tangent, like religion. Like, there's so many different religions. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, you choose your religion, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah,
but it's just
I'm not actually religious, but I love religion. Like, I love like all the principles, the values, what they promote. I think ultimately they don't do the world a disjustice. There's always negativity of something connected to it, but I remember spending last year, I spent a week with some monks.
Oh, nice.
So that was a really good experience. We had to be like vegetarian. We fed the homeless. We learned about their philosophy and stuff like that. It was absolutely amazing. And I love experiencing different types of religions, to be honest with you. And, you know, I have a lot of respect for different people's cultures and religions, whatever it is. But religion ultimately creates good pillars in people's life to follow.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
And whether it is religion or just your own 10 commandments of being a good person, like, I think there's a lot to be said about all of that.
So it's like, pick the parts, like the good parts out of everything that you come across.
Yeah.
Like, don't be afraid to try a million different things. You're gonna come across some bad things. That's life. But just pick out the good bits. And take those with you. Yeah,
for sure. To be honest, we don't have to, by the way, but I think it's important to live life being a good person. And that's all speculative to yourself, right? And to other people. But, you know, giving back, doing the right thing, being supportive, helping people, helping yourself, like, there should be no limitations to any of that, to be honest with you. So yeah, it's just making sure that you're ultimately doing it for people that are reciprocating that maybe in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of karma. Like, karma is...
it's karma's real. I believe that. I believe karma's real as well, by the way. I felt the sharp sword of karma as well. So, you know, we're not invulnerable to it. Sometimes we think, you know, what did we do to deserve this and stuff like that. But, you know, and that's probably why you've got the more good you do, then hopefully the more good will come back to you in some way, shape or form.
But it's always good when that lesson does come and you, for that second, you're like, why is this happening to me? And then you're like, oh, that's why it's happening to me. And then you can take a lesson from that. And I think the more people learn to understand everything negative that happens in your life, you can get a lesson from it.
1,000,000%. You can get a lesson from anything, to be honest with you. You're 1,000,000% right. I think learning is really, like, people. When I was younger, I just didn't enjoy learning. I didn't enjoy school, so I kind of thought, well, therefore I don't enjoy learning. But actually, you need to upgrade your brain. It's so important. And you know, otherwise, I think you start getting stuck in ruts. You go back round in the same place until you've learned to then move on to the next place and then the next place. So, and listening is a very, very important tool. I don't think we learn to listen. I mean, sometimes I talk too much, so I have to be a little bit careful, but actually listening to the other person for what they've actually got to say is also really important.
It's just like points of view. Like you could be at the stage, like never get to the stage where you think you know everything because you don't know everything. Like no one ever will know. Like Elon Musk will not know everything. Like there's always something you can learn from the most unsuspecting people as well.
I think probably Elon Musk, well, I know what works for me is carrying the mentality of not knowing everything, which actually allows them to be at where they've got to. So yeah, I have that mindset of I generally, if I don't know something, I'll always ask. I always have to try and understand something. Rather than just kind of like accept it for what it is. I like, for me, if I know, if it's like something I know and it's like every single day and there's no like variation, you kind of stagnate a little bit. Like the journey into the unknown, that really like stimulates my mind about what is going on. I've been recently traveling quite a lot and it's experienced a lot of different cultures. Nice.
And a lot of things which I don't know, and it's great to just turn up there and experience all these new things. And it's just wicked, and it's such like stimulation of your brain for business, everything. It just helps you so much in the long run.
No, to be honest, in my 20s I used to do a lot of traveling myself, and those were really, really good years. And you know, once I've probably get my business into a good place, I'll probably definitely pick back up on that trail. But yeah, there's a lot to be said about going out into the big wide world and experiencing life, and not getting too confined. You know, some people they'll live in Enfield where I'm from, and they'll stay in Enfield for their whole lives, and they won't go beyond anything beyond that. I think what the only difference is that we've had a very big opportunity in our era compared to say what our parents might have had. I like to believe that there was a lot more simplicity in their lives because it was ultimately about going to work. It was basically about survival to some extent, or it definitely was in my family anyway, where they came over in the 60s, had absolutely nothing, had a council flat and everything like this. And then, dad grinded it out for the next 40 years and, you know, has done really well for himself. And then the opportunity that I've had beyond my father's has just been ridiculous, to be honest with you. I've got to see the world. I've done this, I've done that, like nowhere near it. So, you know, I'm probably very grateful to even get the opportunity to do even half of what I've done already.
Yeah, I think with each generation, there is opportunities which the next generation won't see. Like the previous generation, like their biggest opportunity, I would say, is like real estate. And like look at it now. And
absolutely.
The generation that we're in, I would say, is the knowledge of making money online. Like how easy it is now to make money. By sitting at home.
That's right. 100% right.
The next generation is probably going to have something that we never had.
I know.
It's always like that. But how, like as you mentioned, you worked with your dad.
So I started Prestige on my own in 2017, like I said, and then things started happening when I've around 740 to the 2.4 stage. That's when Dad came. So it was about 2.5 years in when Dad came. And it was really interesting because they was worried for me, is this going to work? What's going to happen, right? And Dad used to work for a big corporate company, was a director dealing with a lot bigger company that he does over here. I mean, he under his remit, there might have been around at 1.60 million worth of revenue that was going on that he was quite responsible for. So when he departed from his previous company, he was getting other opportunities to work with other big companies, and they were offering him all these types of wages. But I think he saw what I saw at that point, and he was like, at first he couldn't see it, but he saw it and he thought, you know what, I'm at a certain age in my life, I can either give it all away to somebody else, or I can help my son build what he's created.
Yeah.
And great respect to him, he's actually done that, to be fair. So, and yeah, I've got a very good relationship with my father. We've got a very interesting relationship, me and my dad, because he was always a businessman. So I didn't really see him a lot around when I was younger. So it feels like we're like a bit more like co-workers than we are actually father and son at times.
Yeah.
And I love him to bits, by the way. But our relationship has been quite interesting over the years. And the tables have turned because he actually used to be my boss at one point. So now the tables have turned. So sometimes I have to pull rank and let him let him know. No, but he's a great guy to work with. My sister works with us as well. She's doing a great job. She actually came from a completely different industry. She lost her job during coronavirus, and we thought, well, look, this is a great opportunity. Why don't you come work with us? Yep. And I've been regretting it ever since. So that's no, it's great. It's really nice to have everyone in.
It goes against like the normal thing that a lot of people say, like, oh, don't work with your family or for your family or with friends, and it always confuses me why, because it's such a, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but like 90% of the time, it is such a good dynamic to have.
Yeah. It is tough, by the way, because, I've seen my own family go into family with other, like their cousins, and it totally go wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what? For me, it's an ego. There's an ego that gets in the way of a lot of things, in a lot of relationships, in a lot of, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whatever it is, it's people's ego of saying, I'm right and you're wrong. And I think the ultimate thing is that it's about winning the war in all of this. It's not about winning battles all the time.
Yeah.
So no, we've got a good dynamic at work, and I pick my battles. So I'm very, this thing about holding myself accountable works for me, because then it allows me to say, well, I can step back from this. It doesn't actually really matter whose decision we take in it, as long as it's moving in ultimately the right direction. So, all of the combinations of what we spoke about, where it's being accountable, not knowing everything, the ego, all of these things have helped me, because then it just ultimately allows me to be more fluid in what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's what sped up all of this process of growing the business.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's knowing as well, especially with family, like their strengths matching with their personalities. And I think that's where a lot of people then stumble into where it all goes wrong, because you're playing to their strengths as well. It's like you wouldn't hire someone if they had no strengths.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's kind of like you go through that process, and it's kind of the same apart from your blood. And I find the loyalty is a lot stronger bonded through working with family. I think that's where a lot of people who then try go business with families stumble by not knowing, like overlooking that point. I don't know if you've sort of found that at all, like play to, like, especially like with your dad, like play to his strengths and stuff like that.
Yeah. So my dad was always hard on me. When I was, people would look on the outside when Dad was my boss. They would look on the outside and be like, he's all right because he's got it easy. It weren't easy at all. It was the complete reverse, by the way.
Yeah.
It was like, and as I say, that was an era thing of what people were like when it came to aggression, when it came to how they communicated and stuff like that. So no, it was, my dad was definitely pushing me in the right direction from a young age. He was helping me sculpt myself, shall I say. So I think we should, I make allowances not just for my family, but for my whole team, by the way. And I think it's good to treat your dad or your sister or your cousin just as how you would anybody else.
Yeah.
And because then people feel more comfortable around you.
Yeah.
But I also hold people accountable like I hold myself accountable. I challenge people just like they're family or not family, because then we can all grow together. If we kind of like, I'm not going to say something to that, I'm not going to say something, you're stopping their ability to actually become better at something or look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, like the old company I used to work for, it was kind of like you could never progress to like here. It was like a very short little window you could go into, and that was it. It was like kind of like some of the guys when I used to work, they would be like, literally, you either come here like your career dreams die or you leave.
Yeah.
And that's like, and when I set my company up, I was like, I never want to be like that company. I never want to be like, that is what people say of my company.
Yeah. And do you know what? It's interesting because it was that reminded me of my old company as well. The first company I worked at, where it was either the best opportunity to start off in or somewhere where you kind of finish your career, like what you were saying. No, I and in my business, I think because we're in that growing place, a lot of people within the business have managed to get opportunities at the same time. Yeah. We've actually developed people within the business, which has been really quite exciting because they're all working hard towards something and they're ultimately getting some level of reward from that as well. Because once you work in a big corporate company, it is very, very difficult to get to the top. Actually, probably nearly impossible if you're not connected with the right people. So I can see how that struggle and that climb is real for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you just got to keep, don't settle at a place if you're ultimately not happy. I think that's, and that, whether that's in business or in life, like you've got to.
Yeah. If any one of my guys come to me and they're not happy with where they are at that stage in life and they feel like they should be better off somewhere else, I will not stop them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
If you truly believe that.
Absolutely,
I will help you.
Yeah, as long as you feel like you've probably done everything in your power to make to alleviate that issue.
Yeah.
I think it's always trying to make sure that you've done enough before it gets to that point. But yes, but then there's the line of saying, well, they might not want what you've ultimately got to offer.
Yeah,
and therefore, they've got to go do what they find, like what they're passionate towards. So, I fully understand that, to be fair.
Have you ever done stuff like, do you ever do stuff like team building, like activities, stuff like that?
So we have a lot of meetings. We don't do enough of it, to be honest with you, which is quite interesting because considering how well we all work together, we'd think that you'd think it would probably be a bit of a weakness in our chain. But, I've taken my team out to places. I always pay for everything. And but no, we probably need to do more of that.
Honestly, we were doing it once a month. And it gets very expensive.
Yeah.
Very expensive. So we've moved now to once a quarter. So 4 times a year plus a Christmas do.
Yeah. And maybe even attach targets to that, right? So it's almost like if we get to this place, then I'll do this.
It is so much fun. Like, because I'm not on site that much anymore.
Right.
And you're with all the guys and you're doing something ridiculous. Like either we go karting, we're playing Top Golf. We did an escape room, and that was chaos. and then we just go out for a meal, and we just all sit down and we just chat shit.
Yeah,
and everyone loves it, and I really find that really builds like morale.
It does
in the business.
Yeah. No, it's like that camaraderie, isn't it? It's like having your team is in a really good place, and it's quite interesting because we almost do that on a daily basis. So we're almost like, this person doesn't feel great today, so we'll huddle around them and make them feel good about themselves. So sometimes I feel like we actually do it as we go along the journey as well, by the way. So, but yeah, no, I always try and give back to my team in whatever way that they ultimately want, whether it's more money or a career opportunity, training, whatever we can do. But everything is done in stages. And you can't give it all away. That's the one thing you can't afford to do. So yeah, you gotta plan things in the right way at the right time. There's a lot to navigate through, and it's really complicated. And and sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, and that's just how it is as a business owner. You always want to. I ultimately always want to do right by people. So, and if I can, I will.
What would be your best piece of advice for anyone who is then progressing from earning like 10 to 90,000, going to 6 figures, then moving to 7 figures? Because it's quite a big jump.
Yeah,
going from 6 to 7.
Yeah.
What would be your advice to anyone?
It's hard. I'd probably have a really big answer in my head, but I think you need to ultimately believe that you can do something.
Yeah.
Like there can't be any self-limited beliefs in that. And then you got to put the work in. Then you got to talk the talk, then you got to walk the walk. And deep down whether you're walking it, by the way. Like there's no other judgment but your own that you should be worried about. Because if you've got time in your day to play PlayStation like I used to, or anything like that, then you are kidding yourself about what you actually want.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it takes a lot of physical hours to put into something for you to get a return on it. And you might not see that return for a long time. Doesn't mean it's not happening. There could be small progress. But all I'd say is you've got to be committed, no limiting beliefs, surround yourself with the right people, and hold yourself fully accountable, and be a good person.
Perfect. Love stuff. Cheers, George.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries.